Hey guys, this is Hayes with CheatSheetPros.com. Today we're going to do the tutorial for the NFL cheat sheet, and I'm going to use the NFL Week 3 sheet that I just updated today on the 19th. I previously had a tutorial out, but I went through it kind of quick to kind of answer some basic questions, so I wanted to go over it in a little bit more detail on this video now that I had some time and update it. So let me get this set up where our screens are the same and everybody can see everything. So as always, open up the cheat sheet. I'll go over some stuff pretty quick. Down here you can see our tabs, and you can't see those on your screen, so there you go. Okay, down here we see our tabs. We have our main. This is good for any fantasy projections. We have an algorithm if you're looking for a one-off player to put in, and just some basic projections for all of the players. This is our bet model. We're going to go over that tab in detail. If you're playing DFS and looking to stack, this is the stacks tab, and we also have a stack score over here on the right. So that's something good to take a look at. Our DVP tab, this is basically your defense versus position. Over here we have the fantasy points allowed, the totals, the ranks, and then for each quarterback we kind of break it down, the running back, etc., etc. So if you're looking for DVP spots, sorry about that. For some reason, I'm getting about 5 calls a day for Medicare, and I'm not even close to that age, but there must be some changes. But anyways, you can come in here and sort it. One of my favorite things to do, whether you're doing props or DFS or you're betting, is this yards per rush allowed. So I like to come over here and sort this, and you can see what the opponent's allowing. So for example, we have Philly and the Saints. So the Saints here, Philly is allowing the 15th most fantasy points to running backs is how you would read this, but they're allowing 140 rush yards per game and 6.4 yards a carry. So the player you would look for is Alvin Kamara. So Alvin has a good opportunity to eclipse a bunch of rush yards. Now again, this is just going off of what the opponent allowed, and it shows the opponent RB1. Keep in mind, if it's a pass catcher, if he runs 8 times a game, he might not be there. But like here, we see Jordan Mason. He's in a really good spot here going up against the Rams, who are allowing 5.5 yards a carry, 1.5 touchdowns to running backs, 154.5 rushing yards. And we all know Debo just got hurt, so Jordan Mason could be a really good play this week, and et cetera, et cetera. The guys down here are going up. These are tough matchups. So you can see here, they're all below 4. 3.8 and under is what they're allowing. So for example, Dallas is allowing 2.7 yards. Baltimore is allowing 2.7 yards per carry, only 37 rush yards per game, but they do allow a rushing touchdown. So Rico or Zeke would be a tough play this week. So this is kind of one of my favorite things to use on the DVP tab. Everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. On the scoreboard, you'll see me post this. This is our model. And I try to keep it simple, sweet, and to the point. I don't want to flood you with information. I don't want to put too much in front of you that it just goes over your head. So I kind of keep it simple. So over here, we've got Vegas. You know, what is the Vegas line? What is the Vegas total? And I show you what it looks like as far as a Vegas score by splitting it up. Over here, we have some basic trends, what they are against the spread, over, under. And then here, this is our cheat sheet line. And here we can see, these, you don't have to worry about the average YPP in yards. That's yard per point. You can just look at like what we're projecting it at, what our line would be, and then the edge. So this is the main column you want to look at if you're betting. If it's greater than a certain number, our model here will pop up and just tell you what the play would be. Lots of times you'll see me post this, and if there's a big edge, there will be like a check mark or I think a half star on some of these. So you can see huge differences on some. So for example, like tonight, New England and Jets play. Jets are -6.5. Our line has them winning 22-17, -5. So that means there's a 1.5 point edge on taking New England in the points. No, it's not huge, but if you're up in the air, you just want some action, that's kind of what I would look at. Now we do have I guess this isn't new, we had this all last year, a power ranking mode. where basically you're looking at the difference of power rankings. Well, it likes the Jets -8. A lot of the ESPN FPI is factored into this with some of my stuff, so it's kind of a weird plug of power ratings, but it's usually pretty good. And then over here, we just have some general stats. We have our season, and then the same thing just over the last 3. And it's your basic offense, defense. And then we have passing yards, rushing yards, and then passing yards allowed, rushing yards allowed, and then yards per rush attempt, which we had talked about in the advanced DVP. So just some basic overall stats to look at if you're looking for a play. Just scrolling down through here, let's see. So we can see we've got a lot of edges here. So last week, I had posted a screenshot. Anything that highlighted, we hit 11 out of the 13. The one we missed, I could have told you we were going to miss that before it started. And again, this isn't meant to be look at it, just play it. Look at it, take it with a grain of salt, and then kind of do your own research and see if you agree with it or not. For example, the Bears are a tricky team because offensively they suck, but their yard per point is really high because defensively in the first week, I think they scored 2 touchdowns. So they had like 180 or 90 yards and then 2 touchdowns, but they were both defensively, so that's kind of skewing the numbers. But here you can see they're 31st on offense, 32nd in passing yards per game, 28th in rushing yards per game, and their offensive line is just getting absolutely murdered. So I don't agree with a Chicago +1. That's a team that, because of that, has a skewed stat, so it's one I'll probably stay away from. Here, Houston, Minnesota, this will be a really interesting game to look at. Minnesota has been phenomenal so far this year, especially defensively and what they've been able to hold opponents to. And here you can see we've got them even winning this game outright as a slight dog, 23-18. So I love Houston. It's hard for me to bet against them because fantasy-wise, I have almost everybody on Houston on one team or another, but that's an interesting game I'm interested to see. Philadelphia and the Saints, this will be an interesting game this week, and the Saints have looked impeccable. I heard some stat on ESPN where Derek Carr, in his last 9 drives, he has led his offense to a score in a row. So I was like, wow, that is absolutely phenomenal. So, of course, everybody knows how well they've been doing. Philadelphia hasn't been great defensively, so this one our model likes Saints by 10, 31-21, and they're a 2.5-point favorite, or that's what it was as of today. So that'll be interesting to watch, etc., etc. But kind of flip down here, see who you like. I usually do write-ups every week. I post my picks, my plays. I'll post a bunch of same-game parlays. I'll dabble a little bit. Another one to be aware of is this San Francisco Rams game. Well, everybody knows what's going on with the Rams. Puka's out. Cooper Kupp is out. They lost, I think, a left guard, or they lost someone else on the offensive line. So, of course, number-wise, this is going to point to a 6-point win for San Francisco, giving a slight edge to the Rams. But remember, this model doesn't take into effect Puka's out, Kupp's out. They're missing a crap ton of people. So I prefer actually San Fran on that one. The Rams are just going to be terrible without those guys. But if you're betting, this is a good place to look, just the scoreboard. If you just want some basic stats to look at, some trends, and get some ideas. If you get into player props, I love player props. Same game parlays are one of the most exciting things you can do. Over here we have our game logs tab, and this is going to look a little bit different. I switched it up. I'm trying to get away from the black backgrounds over here, where it's fine to look at, but it eventually gets hard on your eyes over to these white backgrounds. So I'm slowly kind of flipping stuff over when I get time. Again, click inside the home team. It gives you a drop down of every game. We're going to just take a look at tonight's game. I've posted a lot of these in our article and today for some props, but it gives you some basic stats up here. It tells you kind of what our model expects. And then you can go down here. Let's take, for example, let me zoom in and I'll show you the one that I had posted in case you didn't see it. So, for example, Ramondre Stevenson. And I don't know if I can blow this up any bigger or if that just puts it in the middle. We'll just go with this. I'm not sure if I can blow it up or not. So we have Ramondre Stevenson. So we have his projections up here at the top. That's these numbers. We have any props here. Well, I guess I should do that. That's going to erase it. Anyways, you kind of see we got projections top, we got the props, and then down here we're going to have the game logs. And you can see there's 2 weeks so far. And then here we have your anytime touchdown. We have what his props are for 2+ TDs. And then over here I wanted to pull in a DVP. So for running backs, I have the yards per carry allowed by the opponent. And then also the fantasy points allowed and how it ranks. And it's red or green if it's good or bad. So that gives you a little bit of information. Now, just looking at this game, some of the things that I like here are, you'll notice his rushing attempts. He's projected at 17. I hate projections, but look at what he's done. 25 and 21. Well, I looked up his line. It was 16.5 or 17.5. So New England, they absolutely just want to run the ball like crazy this year. So I like his rushing attempts. I think I put that in the... Well, here I can just pull it up real quick. Dum, dum, dum. Yeah, here I'll just pull it up real quick. Okay, perfect. So this is what I posted in our article and in our group. Well, let me close this. This is going to be much easier to look at. And here you can see the Ramondre Stevenson props. It's the first guy that I want to look at. And his rush attempts, rushing yards, and anytime touchdown are all in play for me tonight, as the Jets have allowed 4.7 yards per carry, which we can see up here in the DVP. And they're allowing the 22nd most fantasy points to the running back position, which we can see right here. And then his rush attempts was around 17. I couldn't remember if it was 16.5 or 17.5. And he's got 25 and 21, which we can see here. So I like that to go over. This shouldn't change anything, and he should have success running the ball, which they should get a few more runs tonight. So I like that to go over. Rushing yardage at 65.5 feels pretty low. We can see his prop here. Now the projections and the props are going to be pretty close to the same. But with 120 in the first game and 81 last game against a tough Seattle defense, I love him to go over the 65. If you want to get crazy, when you go on DK and look at the alt lines over here, if you want to be safe, you can do like 50 plus minus 290, put it in a parlay. I think that's kind of stupid for him because he's either going to go bonkers or nothing. But 60 plus minus 160 will give you pretty good odds. But I like doing something like this, 80 plus at 165. I think that's a good leg. And if you want to get crazy, you can go 90 at plus 260 or over 100 at plus 400. So depending on your risk reward, you can really crank this up. But he's one guy that could have success tonight that I do like. Now I could flip through these and show them to you again, but I'm just going to open up the ones that I posted. And that way they're kind of easier to look at on the screen. Second one I did was Breece Hall. So basically what I'm looking at is his reception yards. Receiving yards, 30.5. He's got 39 and then 52. A lot of people in our chat group was talking about Allen Lazard. I'm not real big on Lazard. He's kind of game script dependent. You know, he's going to go off or he's going to have a couple catches for 15 yards. But Breece Hall is always going to be in there. You can see he got 6 targets the first game, 8 targets the second game. And that doesn't even include the stuff they gave to Braylon Allen. So, I mean, he's good for 4 to 5 targets at a minimum. And, you know, he'll catch 80% of them. And then, I mean, he could catch one and go over that 30.5 yards. So if you want something safe, I think in mine I did 25 plus minus 245. I put in my 5-leg same game parlay. But even at 40 plus, now you're getting into plus money. And he's been 1 yard under it and 12 yards over that. So I like that at plus money. And if you want to jump up to 50, plus 215, you know, if he breaks off a big one, I mean, 60s plus 360. There's some really good odds there. So I do like that. His rushing yard prop I really don't like as much, and the reason why, as you can see here, New England's been really good defensively at 3.3 yards a carry. That's very low, and the 10th least amount of fantasy points. So he's only got 54 against San Francisco, 62 against Tennessee, and his line 62.5. Yeah, Breece Hall is a stud. He should go over that, but it's not something that I'm super confident in, but definitely a play that you might want to take a look at. But his receiving yards should be there no matter what happens in the game. I'll run through these real quick. Antonio Gibson, what jumps out at me was his rushing attempts at 6.5 minus 105. He had 7 the first week, 11 the second week, and he did pretty good the second week, 11 for 96. He's going to continue to be the number 2 and get runs. And if you want to go over here and take like 40 plus yards, that's plus 300. And he put up 96 last week, and he's going up against a team where they should have success. So definitely one to consider. Hunter Henry, kind of the same thing, boom bust. I basically talk about how I don't like his. Sorry, my dog was shaking. How I don't like his normal line, but I do like his boomer. He's a boomer bust play for me. So week 1, we saw 2 for 18 on 3 targets. That's a bust. But then last week in a tight game, 8 for 109 on 12 targets. That's a 44% target share. And I mean, look at these odds. 40 yards plus 125, 50 plus 215, 60 plus 370. You start mixing the plus money, you get 3 of those legs, and you really get a huge payout. To give you an example, so at 60 plus, that's plus 370. We only need to win that 21.2% of the time to be profitable. So if you think Hunter Henry can get 60 yards, 21 games out of 100 if they played back to back to back, then that's a bet you would want to make. It would be a profitable wager. As far as the side, we kind of talked about, I posted this, New England plus 6.5. We got a slight edge on the scoreboard to our point, and you can go take a look at that if you need to. But this is basically our player log tab. And so if I'm doing a same game parlay, I flip down through here, I look at all of these and kind of come up with how I think the game is going to go, game script. A sneaky win here might be Mike Williams. He really hasn't done anything. He had 1 target, 1 catch last week, but I look for him to start getting more and more. But the main 3 guys I like are Stevenson, Breece Hall, and Hunter Henry. Over here on the leaderboard, so the leaderboard and the props tab, they're 2 different things. So the leaderboard, this is going to let you go up here and use this drop down, and you can pick whatever stat you want. Interceptions, total TDs, pass yards, pass TDs, pass attempts. So for example, let's do rush yards. So we go over here to rush yards, and then I'm just going to sort by average. Let's do total. So let's see who has the most rush yards. So of course these are mainly all running backs. And then you can see each week kind of what they've done. So this is like looking at the game logs of all the players side by side for a particular stat. Now I also put in, if there's a prop line, I drop it in here so we could look at it. I thought that was a good thing to have. And then I put their DK salaries just because, for example, like here, Brian Robinson, he's here in the top 7 and he's in this green price on DK at 59, so he's much cheaper than these other guys. So maybe that's a DFS guy that I want to take a look at. Down here, we got some guys in the 5s that we might be interested in, etc., etc. So here we can see J.K. Dobbins, 135, 131 yards. Jordan Mason, 147, 100. Jacobs, 84, and then had 150 last week. Saquon, 109, 95. And then we can come over here and kind of take a look at the props. So, for example, this just seems silly to me. J.K. Dobbins, he's going up against a tough Pitt D, but he's owned Pitt over the years. And he's averaging 133 a game, and he's getting double-digit carries, and his prop's 50.5. Well, if he gets double-digit carries and just has a mediocre game, he's going to go over that number. Jordan Mason, we talked about him and the yards per carry the Rams are allowing. 89.5, that is a high number. He should get there, but again, they've got that priced a little better. Jacobs, Tennessee is really tough on defense, but you can kind of see he's averaging well over his number, and et cetera, kind of go down the list. But we can do this for rush yards if you want to look at rushing attempts. All these little weird props they have on DK. Mason, 28 in week 1, 20 in week 2. I don't have props pulled for rushing attempts, but I bet he's somewhere around 17. So, over that, especially with Debo hurt, he's probably going to get a couple extra carries. But again, this is kind of how we would break this down, and you can do it for anything. Props leaderboard, this one is a lot of fun. So I've been working on this one a lot. You can see here we do pass yards, pass attempts, completions, pass TDs, receptions, reception yards, rush yards, and rushing plus receiving yards. And you can see we probably have 400 props here. I've been updating this every day and reposting it to get more props in, but today, Thursday, appears to be the day when the majority of the props come in. All this stuff is self-explanatory. This is the DK prop line. Now, a couple years ago, I just scraped price picks and I pulled in the price picks line. The problem is they don't have very many lines. They change really quick. And honestly, the payouts on price picks are just awful compared to a sports book. So we have our DK line. So if price picks has a line, it's going to be pretty close to the DK line. because they're all pulling from the same place. And then you can look at the first projection, the second set of projections. You can look at the last 7-game average. And then we can see hit rates for last 5, last 10, etc. Which in this case, there's only 2 games, so everything's going to be 0, 50, or 100. Here, let me close out Elijah Moore while we look at this. So these are all props with 100% hit rates. You can see they've been over their line in there. So say you want a passing TD prop. You can come down here and say, okay, passing TDs, these guys are 100%. So we have Derek Carr, his number's 1.5. He's got 3 and 2. We have Sam Darnold, his number's 1.5. We have 2 and 2. We have Will Levis, his is 0.5, so he just has to throw 1 TD. He's got 1 and 1. And then Anthony Richardson versus Chicago is 0.5. He's got 2 and 1. And then you can kind of go from there for pass attempts, pass yards, whatever you need. I like doing receptions. Looking at these, you can even see the difference between what the average is and the line, which your receptions are going to be pretty close. Reception or receiving yards, that's one that changes quite a bit. So we can come down here, we can look at receiving yards. Now we see a little bit more drastic split. So for example, this guy jumps out. So Alec Pierce, his receiving yard line is 27.5. He's projected at 32 and then 38. So he's projected to go over that. He's averaging 90.5 yards, so he's over that by 63 yards. Now, his first game, he caught a couple big passes for 125, and then he had 56 last game. So you have to decide, was this a fluke? Was this, 1 or 2 big catches? Would he do it again? It feels low, but it's definitely one I'd take a look at. Another thing I like to do is go up here to the split and sort it high to low, and this is going to show us the game logs that are averaging the most over the line. So typically these are all going to be yardage plays. They're rarely going to be receptions or completions. And you can kind of see here, there's a good mix of rush yards, receiving yards, rush plus receiving. And just take a look at some of these. I like to find some that are consistent. So for example, Nico, his line, rush plus receiving is 71.5. And then he's averaged 117. Well, he's done 117 and 135 in the first 2 games. Brock Purdy pass yards is 227.5. That feels low, but they should run the ball a lot and they should be up in that game. But he's got 231 and then 319 last week when he was trying to come from behind. Jamison Williams, receiving yards 52.5. That also feels low. He had 121 the first week and then 79 last week. So just look at offense, defense, how you think they're going to play. You can break it down. Alvin Kamara, rush plus receiving yards, 103.5. That feels really high, but he had 110 the first game and 180 last week. So he had a huge game. But again, just kind of break this down. You can also see the DVP per position on the other side. But if you're doing DFS, if you're doing player props, if you're doing sports betting, these sheets are kind of a go-to for me of how I go through and I break everything down. Over here on the bet tab, I think that's the last thing we were going to look at. Here, this is a little bit more in detail than our scoreboard tab. You can see we have more trends. We have current year, we have prior years. So you can see as a favorite, as a dog, any streak, home, road, over, under, ATS. If you're into yard per point, the YPP, I put the stats here. We can go over that more detail later. But then we have your basic stats over here. We have your offensive yards. We have your defensive yards allowed, your rush attempt per allowed. These over here are your rankings. So you can see New England rushing 177.5 per game. That's 4th best in the NFL. Passing, they average 122 pass yards per game, which is 29th. So you can see they are a much better running team, and they want to run the ball as they are running 58% of the time. Over here, we have our 2 models. We have our early line and we have our 2024 line. So the difference between these two, and I get a lot of questions on them, is our early season line is we take a lot of preseason projections and preseason rankings and numbers, and then we slowly kind of weigh in like week 1, then we weigh in week 1, week 2, week 1, week 2, week 3. So it slowly brings in the 2024 line. So like right now, the majority of it is going to be the preseason stuff. So you can see here in this New England game, our preseason line would be Jets -5. Well, they're -6.5. So this would say, hey, we have a small advantage to take the points. Now, if you're just looking at the 2024 season line, this is just 2 games, so take it with a grain of salt. I typically want to get 5 or 6 games under my belt before I really put any faith in it, but through just 2 games, as long as you understand that with a grain of salt, then you understand that these odds have drastically changed. Now the model says, okay, Patriots -1. So we have roughly 20.5 to 19.8, so I rounded off, but Patriots -1, or you could even say pick 'em, so that would lean us to the 6 points. So we could say preseason, we would have said this game, New England should be +5. Now we should say they should be -1. So we're saying New England is playing much better than what we expected. And then the Jets have kind of tailed off a little bit. So it's kind of turned a little bit. And you can also kind of see what the projection number would be on the other games for the rest of their schedule, how they've done previously. And again, you can click inside here, flip down through all these games, and it will tell you the same thing for every game. And then we have a projected score and model for all of these. So yeah, I hope that helps. If you guys have any questions, let me know. These sheets are made by you guys, so typically people reach out, say, hey, can you add this stat? Or, hey, I found this on NFL.com. Can we add it in? If I can easily get it, I can incorporate it in the sheet for you and keep working and revising. And yeah, well, good luck, guys. I hope this helps.